Welcome to another episode of Distory. My name is Kirk from walruscarp.com, and today we are going to delve more into the Walt Disney World version of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. Now, however, we have finished up on track A. We've gotten through the trophy room. However, we still need to continue on. I know Kate said that she researched quite a bit into the Gypsy camp, and remember, that's their term, not ours. And so we're going to focus on that today, see how far we go. But there's a lot of history to unpack here and a lot of like fun little Disney secrets. With me to explore the wonderful Mr. Toad's Wild Ride is Kate, the Disney Cicerone. Kate, how we doing?
I'm doing really good. Yeah, I'm excited to dig into this one, especially because I got to consult with my husband, who is has a master's degree in ethnomusicology. So there's a little bit of music here that's going to happen, and he gave me some really interesting insight into some of the things that we see and hear as we go into this camp. So very excited for that. Before we,
is it diegetic or non-diegetic? I need to know.
Yeah, But that's not what we're talking about today. That was more the Haunted Mansion, but we have some other interesting new terms for you guys to hear about. But before we go forward, sometimes we have to go back, and we're only going a little tiny bit back because we did have one of our Distory listeners send in something. Not only has our Distory listener Jason sent us more things for Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, but we have another listener named a different Jason. There's more than one.
Is it Derulo?
It's spelled differently. Who has sent us some blueprints that were really interesting. So I'm going to share these here. This was actually in the trophy room. You can see the doors for them. This is it says elevation D, and these are like, you can see the wood paneling of the trophy room and then the doors that you go through. So I just thought it would be interesting to show you guys this. It says pair of retractable doors, and that's obviously the ones that you crash through as Mr. Toad. Just because, Kirk, you were talking about last week about the access panel, which I don't see on here, although it is interesting that like the little squares for that panel, it just has one, and then it says repeat, 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 which I think is interesting. They didn't draw each one individually, that is repeated.
Well, they look like just like molding, right? Like it almost is non-technical. That's more decorative.
I think it's just decorative. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. There is some interesting stuff on the bottom here. He did kind of a close-up of who approved the things. It says the project designer is B. Martin, so that is Bill Martin, who oversaw Disneyland's Fantasyland. So it's interesting. He's involved also in this one, probably just kind of overseeing the project. And then Rolly Crump is the one that's also overseeing it as well. And this says Area 15 and elevations and properties and all these things. So just really kind of interesting to see the close-up of the blueprints.
I love seeing sign-offs like that, because I remember back in the day when I worked in beer, for each and every sign request, we would have a stamper as a manager, and you'd have to stamp it, and then I'd have to sign it, and then the sales rep would have to sign it, and then the sign shop guy would have to sign it. And I was like, can we knock off this bureaucratic nonsense? We just need to get this thing moving. So I'm sure there was probably some of that in Imagineering, where it was just like, God, there's so many approvals. Like, we got to go.
Yeah. So it's that red tape, right? That's what slows down the process.
Somebody's got to own up. Yeah, somebody's got to own up to whether or not the project succeeds or fails. So a lot of that comes to paperwork.
Another thing that we have here is some blueprints of the kitchen, which we just completed, and we won't go all over it again. But something that we noticed here is that if you remember, we had that like butcher block table that was on the right-hand side as you go through. This picture is obviously facing towards the track as if the car was coming towards you, but there was this butcher block table and a window on the right side. But if we look in these blueprints, you actually see a sink and almost like a sideboard with some dishes on it that was going to be there instead. And at some point they possibly changed it, or perhaps they changed it in the refurb. But it seems to me like they did something that was less complicated. They're like, let's just stick this
that's
table
where
in here.
I'm at. Like, look at how easy that butcher block is versus like a sink. And again, if you look at the way that the track is detailed when we went through this scene, your focal point's more to the left, not to the right. Although people can obviously look that way, we kind of are veering towards the Iceman. So that's our first pot, and then we kick it to the right. But most of our focus is over there into the stove area and not that table. So I just feel like where you're looking, it's not that significant for them storytelling wise to add the sync. And it was probably cheaper and faster and easier.
Exactly. I think it was a cost cutting thing, if I had to
Yeah.
guess. That being said, I'm ready to move forward if you are.
Let's do it.
So where we left off last time, this is the little layout of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride in Walt Disney World from 1971. You can see we've already gone through the load area and Toad Hall, the trophy room, the kitchen, and now we're going to head into what is labeled as the Gypsy Camp. We'll get into, that terminology and whatnot. I want to put a little disclaimer here that we know that the term gypsy is not a good word to use. It is a derogatory term. And however, that is what's used here in the technical language and in 1971. So we have to kind of use it here and there, and it's not meant in a derogatory way. We know it's a Romani people is the better way to use it, and also throw that in as we talk about it here too. So just know that if we use it, it's in historical context, and we were trying to be accurate to what it was back then. That's all. So that being said, we're going to head. You can see in these blueprints, in this layout, we go around like a big U-turn in this gypsy camp. So it's kind of like it's a pretty big scene that we're tackling here, which is why we're like not sure how far we're going to get beyond it, because there's a lot going on in this particular one. Kirk, do you want to take us in video wise into the camp?
Yep, I've got us all prepped and set up. So remember, each one of these scenes is relatively short, so we're going to backtrack a little bit just into the kitchen. So imagine that we have just left the trophy room, entered in the kitchen, and the Iceman delivery is right there. So as we head on into here, we almost hit the Iceman. Again, we're basically looking to the left, looking at the maid with the dishes. Boom, we smack through the doors. And now we head into a long corridor of trees. We've entered into the forest. So we've exited outside of Toad Manor, and we are now in the woods. And the first thing that we start to see are these various trees adorned on each side, and affixed to these tree trunks are various signs. So I think we should start there.
Okay, I do also have this blueprint as well of going in this area, which is fairly similar to the layout that I showed you guys. But here's one of the first signs. It says, "Know your destiny," and it's kind of orange and has a gray circle with it. And then it's got signs. I think
Oh,
they're
that's a
supposed to
lovely
be
picture.
zodiac signs. I know I grabbed it from one of the great videos that we have, but
Yeah.
and it's got like a starburst in the center, and then like zodiac signs around it. So I don't have anything else to say about it unless you do, Kirk.
No, I had the same exact thing, that it was zodiac. And knowing your destiny is kind of like what's kind of interesting about these things, and I think about destiny as being predetermined. So when you look at this sign, we're going to talk about the gypsies, and we're going to talk about fortune telling and everything, but yet knowing your future, knowing your destiny, you're almost predisposed having certain specific signs.
All these posters are very iconic style of Rolly Crump. He is someone who I don't know how to describe it. I think that's the best way to say it, is these posters as we go
It's
through
like
it, is this,
Museum of the Weird stuff.
yeah, it's very much Rolly all over. This is his design style. So the next one we see is "The future is in your hand," and we do see a
Whee!
palm
Of
with
course.
different symbols on different parts of the palm, which is of course for palm reading. And I think we're going to get into that a little bit more when we get to Madame Sarah. Yeah, like
Not yet. Nope.
Okay,
No
that's
way, dog. You ain't getting off that easy. So in college, dude, I actually studied this stuff because it was a really fun bar trick to read people's palms. Really good opener, too, if you ever want to do something that's really fun. People love hearing about themselves and love hearing about their future. By the way, this is all like what we would consider cold reading, and you base it off of their reactions. That's kind of how like storytelling and fortunes work. But palmistry, also called palm reading or chiromancy, has a very, very long history that started in 3000 BCE in India, as well as China. There was some early palm reading, then ancient Egypt, then ancient Greece, and then it really spread during the medieval and Renaissance period. So we start to see it, especially during the Middle Ages, specifically because, you're thinking about the really, really bad things, particularly plagues, and lots of folks wanted to know their future and what would happen because, again, we don't have a lot of microbiology or knowledge of the sciences or medical, so a lot of it is guesswork. So this kind of gave gave some resonance on what your future would look like. And then you start getting in the Victorian age, which is where we're kind of landing here and where these Romani folks would be practicing this. When they arrived in Europe, they closely became associated with palmistry, helping spread the practices all throughout European countries. So the Romani folks are the ones that really kind of push this forward. And it starts to get more of a scientific approach where they start looking at all the lines in your hands and affix them to either it could be planets or gods, and think like some of the stuff is ancient Greek or Roman, and then also some of them they start using it to describe people in like the simplest of ways, the ways that people actually care about. And I won't go too in depth, but if you look at your hands, I've put up, it's just a simple one where it shows your lifeline, your wisdom line, your love line, your marriage line, your fate line, your sun line, your children line, your health line. So if you ever want to see, what's your hand look like? Do you have anything good?
I don't know. I got a strong
I got
marriage
it.
line. I've always heard that.
I've got a good long lifeline. My lifeline's pretty good. I think that's number 4. My marriage line's solid. And my fate line or my career line is solid. So that's good. I don't know what this one is, though, because it like curves up. So I don't know. I have to do more research about my future.
All I remember is from like school of like the M. Like if you have a really good, like a solid M, then you're going to have a good marriage. And I have a good marriage. So I guess that's
Where's the
that's
M?
accurate. Well, look,
Point on your hand where the M is.
you can see it if I like fold my hand in a little bit. You can see it's like I can't do this backwards, but it's like you can see the M for marriage.
Or I have an M down here, but I don't know what the heck that means.
No, you can see it.
Oh,
It's
I
like
got
this,
you.
like
I got
this
you.
wide-
Okay.
yeah, it's a big.
It's
It's a
pretty
big
wide.
M.
Oh yeah, dude. I'm all right. I'm all right. You good, Mel? We good. According to my palm, we're good. So yeah, fun. Check it out, palmistry. It's really interesting, and you can impress your friends if you learn just a little bit. Learn like 4 lines. That's what I did, and then you could just tell people their future. It's a lot of fun.
That's really fun. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next poster. This one says heads read. So this is like reading your mind, and it has a picture of a head with, I don't know, it's supposed to be a brain. It's so hard to see from like this.
Oh yeah.
But it's like a profile of a head with almost look like your brain, like you're gonna read your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything for that?
Oh, I do.
Okay.
So in the 1800s, 1840 to 1920, there was a rise of spiritualism, which created enormous demand for mediums and psychics, leading to a more sophisticated style of something that I had mentioned before, which is called cold reading techniques. And cold reading, for all intents and purposes, is you're leaving a door open. And so I could say something like, Kate, it looks like you had a really troubled, struggling past. Was there any kind of like events that really were bothersome? And then based on your responses,
Like
I can
everybody's
basically
gonna
tailor.
say yes to that.
Yeah, everyone's going to say yes. So you use a lot of open-ended things. And then when you push it a little bit further, like you can get into specifics. Like sometimes psychics will use names, but what they'll do is they'll look at how old you are. Right. So what's your age? What were the most common boy and girl names? So they could be like, was there somebody named Sarah that was important in your life? Right. So like the likelihood of you having a Sarah that you will pull out of your head because this person is saying Sarah, or maybe a Bethany. Now I'm like covering up like 60 or 70% of like women's names in the 1990s. Do you know what I mean? Like that possibly you would have a relationship with.
Right.
So
say like Jennifer, Katie, like the names that are like the most common. David.
Yeah, exactly. So they would use those types of techniques to get you to open up essentially, and then based on if you either rejected what they were saying or engaged in what they were saying, they would continually add on or remove. Okay, maybe that's not what I'm getting. Maybe I'm getting more of a like that's all they do is they just like change it based on you're saying. So like what's kind of funny too is P.T. Barnum used to use these kind of things with mentalism. And so there's like a bunch of different methods that were used, where you make generalized statements seem specific, but they apply to most people. There's also fishing, when you're asking ambiguous statements to elicit information that can be reflected back using reflective listening. There's hot reading, where you actually observe and study your the person that you're going to read ahead of time. But most of the time, these are just like passerbys.
Right.
Observation, use clothing, speech patterns, physical appearance to make accurate inferences. And then one is called the rainbow ruse, which is making contradictory statements that cover multiple possibilities. So in Mr. Toad's sense, and we'll see this a little bit later in this camp, they would employ these techniques in combination with card reading, palm reading, to ostensibly be their method of like divination, like meaning like they would show that they have spiritual powers through the combination of all of these types of skill sets to prove that they can tell your future. And of course, that comes at a cost.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, it's interesting.
These things are all really fun to do. Like, oh my God, there's so much fun to do. Learn cold reading, again, another fun thing to do at a bar.
So after heads read, there's one that says the crystal ball, and then I think it says tells all or sees all. Like, it's really hard to say. Do you know what I could barely see it.
I don't know. I think the same. I think it says sees all, says all, does all, knows all.
Tells all, knows all, something like that. Yeah. So there's a
Something
crystal
like
ball with those words, very, very simple poster, because again, we always talk about visual economy. This ride is like the place where they employ visual economy the most, because you fly by at a rapid rate. So they have to communicate what you're heading into in a split second. So they have these big, strong visuals of a head, a palm, a crystal ball. Obviously, you're heading into somewhere that's going to have all of these like mystical things, right? So with a crystal ball, I do have kind of a fun quote to go along with this crystal ball from Rolly Crump. And he said, it was a quote about Walt Disney. And he said, Walt was a genius in every aspect of his life. Those who worked with him would always say that he had a crystal ball in his back pocket, and everything that mattered, he knew the future and made the correct decisions. I thought it was really fun. So I thought of Walt Disney having a crystal ball of himself. So
yeah, in his back pocket, dude. His pantaloons must have been huge, bro. Holy cow!
His back pocket.
Could you imagine?
You don't want to sit on that.
No, not at all.
So then what we see next after this, we're actually like rounding the corner at this point, and we see a sign that says Gypsy Camp. Again, we've already talked about the word gypsy, but we see a sign that says Gypsy Camp that's like a red sign that's pointing to the where you're headed. And then sitting on top of it is an owl, which we talked about in our Haunted Mansion Q series quite a bit. So I won't revisit all of that. But owls, of course, are connected with witchcraft. That's why you see them in Harry Potter and whatnot. They've been historically related to witchcraft. So it makes sense to put an owl in the scene, because we're kind of headed into a place where we're talking about
Wait, who did they put in the scene? Sorry, I missed it.
An owl.
Who?
Oh, you got me.
Got her. Chalk one up for the good guys.
Oh, dang it. I fell for it.
Sorry, kids. I did that for my own amusement. Don't you cut that either, Kate. Don't do that to me.
Fine. Okay. Well, then next to it is what I presume to be Madame Sarah, which we'll see that the name in a moment here. But she is holding a deck of cards that kind of fan out. The animation is that they fan out, and a sign also that says fortunes told that actually kind of waves back and forth. So it's kind of like she's advertising, like, hey, come on, we're going to tell your story. She's got a little hat on it's a red hat with 3 stars. It's like a canonical hat. And then a big scarf that's green with red flowers on it, and also like a daisy necklace. And then she looks a little crazy.
Yeah.
Do you have some thoughts about Madame Sarah here?
The only person that I immediately thought about after staring at this lady was Madame Mim. I mean, it's for some reason, I don't know why, I can't not think about Madame Mim, because she looks so similar. Hair, eyes, and facial structure. The rest, not so much. I mean, maybe her feet, but her garments are clearly very, very different. I couldn't tell her eye color if that was blue. I think it's blue, where Madame Mim's is green, which green makes sense for Madame Mim only because green with envy, particularly of Merlin. And of course, the time period makes sense.
Well, and green is stereotypically used for evil in Disney culture, right?
Yeah.
So green is always the color we see like you think like Maleficent and whatnot. Green is always kind of like the color of evil. So having her have green eyes is meaningful in that way.
As Kermit the Frog once said, It ain't easy being greensy.
Well, I mean, even like Slytherin house is also green. It's not Disney, but like the green is typically used
You
for
mean
evil
the
in a lot of
best
places.
house? You mean the house of people that get things done and have loyalty? Yeah, I know all about it.
Yeah, Kirk thinks he's a Slytherin, but he's not.
You are so full of it, dude. I
You might.
literally have right over here a notebook with all the villains on it, and you're gonna tell me that I'm not a Slytherin, bro? There's a snake right there.
I think you're wannabe Slytherin. I'll give you that.
I Severus Snape was the greatest character ever in the Harry Potter series, and I will die on that hill.
Um.
Greatest sacrifice ever, and he was a slith dog.
Okay. Okay.
All right, sorry. You did this to me.
I know.
I'm reeling it back. I'm common.
I do think, though, you're right. It's so interesting how many things in this attraction honestly look similar to movies and things that we are like characters from movies or pieces from movies or things like we'll see this as we go through this attraction, not just in this scene, but further out in this attraction as well. There's a lot of things that remind me of other things in Disney culture, and I don't think that's an accident. I think that they feed off of each other. Either they pulled inspiration from this ride for the film, or vice versa, depending
Oh
on the
yeah.
timeline. So, I mean, I don't think it's an accident that they
I
look
think it's
alike.
also due to speed and process. Like just like they would reuse film cells, like why make a new witch head when we already have one? We just have to throw clothes on it. Do you know what I mean? Or as we see in the future, another very popular character from a big movie.
Right. Somebody else who practices witchcraft that we know well. Sword in the Stone came out in 1963, so it would have already existed. So people would have already known
Yeah.
Madman and Mim by this point, and so they could recognize, some characteristics of that would automatically, they would think crazy, somebody into magic and wild stuff, and possibly not a good person, which is kind of not great for the stereotypical gypsy thing. But
Mad, 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 Madam Mim.
I do like Madman and Mim, though.
I
She's great.
love that witch's duel is like one of the greatest animated scenes or sequences.
Do you want to take us in with the video
Yeah, sure.
into this scene?
All right, so we're starting back off into the trees. The palmistry hand sign is on the right, and we're going to pass by the other ones very, very quickly. So we're heading in through the tree canopy. There is our mind reading, our crystal ball says Gypsy Camp, and then boom, we're already at the Madame Sarah tent. She's, of course, over there on the left.
Yeah, so we see this tent that's got moons and stars on it. So you can see that it has Madame Sarah is on this big banner that's yellow and red that's on the top of it, so you can't miss it. And then her little tent there. So, like Kirk said, the practice of fortune telling and all this kinds of stuff that was also very common with Romani gypsies. The fortune telling, the tarot reading, all of those kinds of things. These are trades and art forms that created economic opportunities for these people who were nomadic people. So I have this really great picture of this, and it just say Gypsy Maud Lee, and then it shows kind of one of their caravan is behind there, and then you see this kind of like rounded structure and a little hut set up with some chairs where she's reading her palm, and it says fortune telling at Blackpool at the bottom. But this did allow for a sense of autonomy and protection in countries that punished the Gypsies' way of life, the Romani people's way of life. So I just wanted to make a couple of notes about the Romani people at this point, just to give you more context of who they are. The Romani Gypsies have been in Britain since 1515. They migrated from continental Europe during the Roma migration from India. The term gypsy is a derogative term. It comes from Egyptian, which is what settled the population. The settled population perceived them to be because of their dark complexion. So they are this oh, they must be Egyptian. We're going to call them gypsy. They're not that, though. They're not Egyptian. And then they're also nomadic people, which means that they move from place to place. They're not settled, as they call it. So they will stay somewhere for a little while, and then they'll pack everything up and move somewhere else. In 1530, there's the Egyptians Act was passed. This law was aimed at ridding the country of all Egyptians or gypsies by banning immigration and voluntarily requiring gypsies to leave the country within 16 days or risk imprisonment, execution, or deportation. So really serious, they had to get out of the country within 16 days, which is not very long. Eventually, they amended the laws so that they could settle. But a lot of the Romani people were enslaved. It's just like really bad. They're very, very badly persecuted people. They were tolerated in your area as long as they were useful for like farm labor, entertainers, blacksmiths. But they were made to move on when they were no longer useful. In the 1800s in like Toad's England, right? If we're putting this in context back of the ride, the Romani people faced widespread prejudice and persecution with their way of life and identity viewed as a threat, leading to legal restrictions and negative stereotypes about them.
So just looking at this photo, heading into that tent, that gypsy tent, we can see that crescent moon on there. There is a lot of like using the phases of the moon to tell your fortune. So specifically with new beginnings, intuition, and also because of the moon and the phases and the cycles, there is a feminine divine in that as well. So there's kind of a lot of the precursors for this are reflective in the female storyteller and someone who can read your fortune in the future. So I think that's kind of cool that they utilize that here, because that was certainly iconography from that time period using the moons. The last thing that I wanted to talk about before we walk away from Madame Sarah is the fact that she's holding cards, because most people probably would think, and me too, I objectively did this incorrectly. I go, why is she holding playing cards? They screw up. She should have been holding
Tarot
what I
cards.
would think would be tarot cards.
Right.
Exactly, Kate. But they are not tarot cards. In fact, the original, and I'm going to explain this in a second. You could actually tell the fortune with playing cards. But before we get into that, I want to talk just a little teeny tiny bit about tarot cards. Tarot cards first appeared in northern Italy around 1430s as a card game called tarocchi. And these decks were used for gaming purposes, but not for storytelling or fortune telling. They were hand-painted luxury items and commissioned by noble families. The basic structure of the tarot decks started to get established in the 15th century with 78 cards, 22 trump cards, which later became the major arcana, and the 56 suited cards, which were the minor arcana. But now, obviously, fortune telling and this gets utilized, but another precursor to using tarocchi or tarot cards would be using cardomancy.
Cardomancy. That's a new term for me.
Yeah, I had never heard of it before until researching. Cardomancy is the fortune-telling practice using a standard playing card deck. Basically, how it works is you prepare the deck using a 52-card standard deck. Some people would remove the jokers, while some would keep them in as wild cards representing major life changes that just happen. Many believed in clearing the deck's energy by shuffling them thoroughly and focusing their intentions, known as cleansing the deck. The cards each had different meanings. Hearts were emotion, relationships, love, and happiness. Diamonds would be wealth, career, material concerns. Clubs would be knowledge, growth, achievement, and business. Spades would be challenges, truth, difficult decisions, and endings. And the card values would carry how much significance of these events would be. So numbered cards 1 through 10 would have specific representations, like number 2 for some reason represented partnerships. It's very, very complex. Then there was also aces, meant new beginnings and opportunities. Kings meant men, authority figures, mastery. Queens were women, nurturing figures, intuition. Jacks were young people, messages, and thoughts. And there was a lot of different ways that you could read somebody's fortune, but the most common one was the 3-card spread. It's the simplest method, where you would dole out 3 cards, 1 for the past, 1 for the present, and 1 for the future. So, Kate, the question I give you is, how lucky are you feeling?
Oh, man. Are we going to do cardomancy here?
We are.
How lucky am I feeling? I'm feeling pretty lucky. Okay.
I am going to draw your cards, and let's see what you get.
Okay.
Oh, God, dude. Kate, I'm so nervous for you, dude.
I'm
All right,
nervous.
Your past, your present, and your future. You drew the Ace of Diamonds, the 3 of Clubs, and the 5 of Spades. So in your past, the Ace of Diamonds. The diamonds are material world, finances, career, livelihood, property and wealth, and physical health. And the ace
It's a
is
lot of
the
things.
yeah, it's like the beginning of a financial livelihood, prosperity, and wealth. Seems to be like you're on the cusp of that. The
Great.
three of the okay, well that's good. These are good things.
Yeah.
The three of clubs is action, work, and growth. This is part of your present.
All right.
And three is creativity and movement. Come
Wow.
on, Kate.
Okay.
This
That's
is
a little
landing.
scary. Not gonna lie.
Uh, and the five of spades. Spades are reason and intellect. So in your future, you're going to have to make some very specific decisions and challenges because you're going to be conflicted with them. And it was, what number was it? It was the 5, which represents challenges, conflict, and risk, man. You're gonna have to put yourself out there and make some very specific decisions if you want to get back to that age of prosperity and wealth.
Oh, well, that doesn't sound fun.
That isn't that where the best path of greatest fortune lies in the highest risk, Kate?
I guess so. But I mean, I'll take it though. Like, got it. Yep. I just don't like making hard decisions. So that's gonna
Yeah,
be.
but this shows you that you have a great opportunity in front of you to be able to make some changes.
I'll
And
take it.
so yeah, there
That's
you
great.
go.
I mean, there could be worse fortunes than that. So
I thought it
great.
was pretty good. I did my best to softball it, but I'm not gonna lie to you, Kate. The cards tell the truth.
The cards don't lie.
Yeah, so listen, if you want to have some fun, grab a deck of cards and print out this fortune-telling cardomancy sheet, and then you can go tell somebody's future.
Yeah, that's so fun.
And make it fun. Make it a little bit more fun, Fill in the details.
Well, I love that you unraveled the mystery about why she's holding those types of cards instead of tarot cards, because I would have assumed tarot cards would have made
Yeah.
more sense for her. So thank you
Me
for
too.
giving
Yeah,
us some context there.
Plus, you know your future, Kate. You
Yeah.
better make those decisions, girl, or prosperity ain't gonna find you. You need that. You need the Ace of Diamonds again, girl.
I do. It's true. We're having just a little discussion in our live chat here on YouTube about the heads red card. And so I just wanted to touch back on that real quick. Eric in our chat said, I'm 99% sure that heads red refers to the pseudoscience phrenology, which sought to protect mental traits based on the shape of the skull. And Christina added in the guy that developed the initial ideas of phrenology was Franz Josef Gall around the 1790s, who was German. So, I mean, I guess it's possible. What do you think, Kirk?
I personally think that it's probably not in reference to that, although the scientific design of the drawings, like if you look at any 1700s, 1800s, like scientific drawings, like I showed that one earlier of the hand, like they all look like that. So like that's how they drew those types of things. So I'm sure there's lots of parallels, although they usually use that for especially in England, they use that for logic and reasoning of why they were able to basically take control of countries because they had a due diligent right based on their skull sizes to basically oppress and steal resources from people. And it was a complete pseudoscience that's made up, but it's, yeah, I render it more like that. In this instance, I don't view it as they would have taken that phrenology approach. I think they used old English anatomy book pictures to pull out a mind and or like what a brain skull structure would look like. But I totally see where the references are. Okay, I could be totally wrong, and that's okay too. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I think I agree. I don't know that in that particular, Romani Gypsy culture that would have been related. I know Christina in our chat saying kind of something similar. So it's like I don't know for sure, but it's an interesting theory to throw out there. So thank you for adding.
Yeah, I think the imagery immediately makes us think about all of those types of things, and you probably haven't seen that many skull diagrams on a poster board before that's from England. So it makes logical sense because we probably associate it with those earlier learnings, probably when you were in history classes and whatnot of what they did in the 17 and 1800s. So,
Right, for sure.
Yeah. But I could be totally wrong.
Totally wrong. Let's move on. I would love to talk a little bit about a part of this Romani culture, which is caravans, which is
Mm.
essentially their homes that they live in. This is the wagon that they set up their homes in, and then they can pack up and move on when they need to. But this was a very important part of this particular culture. And so I actually did some research into different styles of caravans because we see, if we're looking at this picture here, this is from the Mr. Toad, and you can see that there's actually some different styles in this in different shapes. Like sometimes they have rounded roofs, or this looks like an entire circle, like, and what?
This is the greatest thing ever. You're going to go into the shapes of wagons right now?
I am.
Yes.
You know I love wagons. This is I am fully buckled up. I pulled up yes, let's do this. I am so engaged.
Kirk loves his wagon. He loves a good
I
wagon.
do, dude. I've spent way too much time looking at wagons through Big Thunder. I am in.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yep, we're gonna talk about wagons. So here's kind of like just to give you an idea of what these caravans look like, as that's what they called them. There's lots of different shapes, but this one, they all look somewhat ornate. A lot of them look ornate. So here's the different types of van or caravan. There is the Reading one, which is named after the family that made them. That's a fairly typical shape, and it usually was crimson and gold color wise. So that's usually its coloring. There's a ledge one that has kind of almost like a cutout on the sides, so it looks like there is a ledge, and then it gets narrower at the bottom. So that's where the style comes from, is this ledge. That one was also typically crimson and gold. Then you have these ones that are bowed at the top. It's almost like a whole arch, and it makes like a big circle. Like it reminds me of like a Hobbit house, honestly, like when you look at it. But this is called a bow top. It has a curved roof. Then there is a Burton, which is actually evolved from the Burton wagon, which was like the Romani caravans typically look like the Burton. They evolved from the Burton wagon, which was used by actors and actresses of the circus in the middle of the 19th century, and they were usually yellow. So if you think of like circus wagons pulling into town, this is like a Burton wagon is usually what you're thinking about. Then there's kind of the more simpler ones for people who maybe don't have as much money. There's one that's called a pot cart, which has a circular top but has more of like a canvas roof going on.
That's what I used to call Kate's car back in college.
I did not do that in my car, just to clarify. And then there is the open lot, which has a curved roof, but also is kind of like a combination of a pot cart and a ledge. So it has a little ledge at the bottom that is cut out, and then it also has a curved roof. So I have some great pictures of them, of some of the ones. This is actually like a restored Gypsy Romani caravan that you can see here, and it is red and goldish or yellow, and has these kind of like spines down the side and some really ornate designs in them as well. They're usually highly decorated, and they had a lot of colorful painting and gilding. The most common motifs you see in the designs were horses, lions, or griffins placed near bunches of grapes or bunches of sunflowers. So you'll see a lot of flowers, like Madame Sarah had a bunch of flowers on. All the designs depended on the personality, like how they would decorate their house, and also the financial status of the owner of the particular caravan. So how much money you had will determine how it looked.
You know, those Burton ones probably were the wealthy folks, where I imagine any of those pot carts or the opal ones are for folks that just don't have a lot of wealth.
I love these ones. They're so ornate and beautiful, and I can understand why, Rolly in particular was really interested and fascinated with them. Here's one that is a little bit more simple. You can see does have a window in the side, but that's more of that like bow top version that has almost like, this one almost has like a canvas top, so it might be like a pot cart. This caravan in particular might look very familiar to those of you who know Haunted Mansion history, and also Rolly Crump's designs for the Museum of the Weird, because this is the Gypsy cart, in his terms, that he designed for the Museum of the Weird. The Museum of the Weird was something that Walt was like, hey, this stuff's really weird, Rolly. It like kept me up all night. And so he's like, we can't put this in the Haunted Mansion because it will freak people out, but maybe we'll make it like its own like side attraction for people who want the extra weird, right? So that's what this would have been. And then Walt passed away, and then it just never happened because nobody understood the vision for it. And they're like, we're not doing that. So this is in Rolly Crump's words about this particular gypsy caravan, what this was about. So he said, there was also a gypsy wagon that, much like the small world clock, would come to life every so often and put on a sort of show. Flames would shoot out, doors would fly open, bells would ring, and all sorts of magical, weird little stuff would happen. I also wanted it to use black art and have things float in the air and move in and out of the cart to kind of throw people off more. Black art is something you see in a theater lot where props are on the stage, but the curtain is black and the lights are dim, and somebody dressed in all black could come on stage and start moving items around, and you'd swear the stuff was actually moving by itself because you couldn't see the person in black. It's a simple little illusion, and I thought it would give the gypsy cart an extra weird quality. So this is something he wanted to design. We're all really sad that this never came to pass. I was really hoping when they were putting in that new gift shop that they would incorporate something like this, even a smaller version of it outside, and they didn't, and I'm very sad.
Ooh.
They did put a few of Rolly's designs inside the shop, but it's honestly not as ornate as I thought they would. But then you have Rolly himself ended up making his own gypsy cart for his backyard. So you can see him here sitting on a bench toasting, and the cart has it does have like a palm on it for like palm reading and a couple of his posters, and it's a simpler cart obviously than what we see, but it looks like a ledge if I had to say what kind of gypsy cart it was, because it has that cutout in the side. So
yeah,
you like your
man, I can't believe, why would he go with a ledge? The
I don't
inside, he
know.
likes to have like a little countertop, I guess.
I know.
That makes sense.
I know. It's definitely a smaller one. The caravan was regarded as the most valuable possession of the Romani women. Husbands usually slept in a tent outside, and so the women would sleep in here sometimes. The interior of the van was the women's domain.
And you thought chivalry was dead, Kate.
Whenever the Roma found a suitable place for temporary camps, the wise woman went around to all the neighborhoods with a ceremonial broom to disperse all evil spirits, which I thought was interesting. And then they would also prepare a meal, usually on the street near the van. And then after you passed away, typically your caravan was burned in a ceremony because it's the end of your life. And so it wasn't passed on to the next of kin or whatever. It was just burned as part of their culture, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, that's very financially, as
your accountant of the caravan, I'm going to suggest that you repurpose this or sell off the assets for the remaining kin.
not a good use of resources there, especially for folks that are definitely struggling. It's really interesting that it was that important, and the caravan became such a significant part of their family tribal life that if someone passed, that you would literally burn basically your car. Could you imagine if like somebody passed and instead of selling their car or using their car, you just lit it on fire?
Yeah, that sounds dangerous.
Or their house. I mean, it's more like their house.
Their house.
Because
It's
they
literally
lived in
their
these
house.
things.
Yeah. You just burn your
weird.
house down when you pass away. Yeah. But it's cultural. It's what they did. And, perhaps it's also because you think the spirit of the person would inhabit it or something, so it's like letting them go, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that.
Yeah. Some other things.
We have that superstition for New Year's with a broom where you sweep off all like the bad luck out of your house. Like you literally like open the door and we take a broom. If we learned it from my grandmother, we just literally dust out the house and like out with the old in with the new. Yeah, I don't know why we do it.
It's like an Italian thing, maybe.
I don't know, bro. It's my grandmother's thing. My grandmother would also tell us you got to walk out with a purse and go fill her up underneath the moon.
Really?
I hide coins. I do like there's crazy stuff. I don't know why I do any of it.
You should do some research into that, Kirk. It's interesting.
Oh my God, dude. We burned my grandmother's house when she no, I'm just kidding. She's still very much alive. She's 100 years old, dude. We do what she says.
You should go ask her.
You do what she says.
Why you have to do those things.
She might be Romani. What do I know?
I do have just a couple other things real quick before we move on from the caravans. This is some of Rolly's sketches for other concepts that he did outside of Disney. And I just want to point out that the Gypsy camp, the Romani people, he really loved this stuff. And he made so much artwork that was based on it. This one's kind of fun. It says Zaz sees all and knows all in the back. You can see like a fortune teller who's like floating on her back. for like
That's so funny.
yeah. And then you can see a lot of the cards. Also, Kirk, those cards that you were pointing out, there's a woman in the front who has the same ones, and they're not tarot cards. They're just a regular deck of cards.
Dang, yo, Cardomancy in the house.
And I love that there's a stove in here too, which we saw here in this attraction. There's kind of an old-fashioned stove. So you can see these themes of his show up in his designs other places. There's a tent
This is a
with
great
moon and the
photo.
stars. I know, right? And
I
there's
feel like it has like so many elements of this ride. Like I feel like he
I
just
know.
took this image and just was like, all right, this will work, this will work, this will work.
And I think this was after this attraction. So he probably pulled things from this
Pulled it
attraction.
afterwards.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And there's even a very highly decorated caravan too in the bottom right that you can see there. So I just
Got that Burton money, dude.
So he also did this caravan, which is kind of like a mini one. This is actually for Six Flags Astroworld. He did a character called Marvel McFay, the ambassador of happiness. So he kind of reminds me of Dreamfinder a little bit, into like his style of his red hair on his facial hair and whatnot. But he's definitely like a Romani gypsy person. But here's his original sketches for this caravan. So he really loved a good gypsy cart, Rolly Crump. But yeah, so he did this character too. So this is very common for Rolly to want to make these things in this style. So that's all I was
Yeah.
pointing out there. So in this attraction itself, there are 4 different caravans in this ride in total, and they're all slightly different styles depending on which one you're looking at. So they're different colors too, but they're not like super ornate, probably because there's so much going on in the scene that they really wanted you to focus on the characters. And if the carts themselves were extremely ornate, it was going to pull your focus from the characters. And in such a short period of time, you really have to you have to focus the guest's attention on what they want you to see. So I think that's why these caravans aren't highly decorated. That's my theory, at least. I don't know if you have thoughts, Kirk, about that.
Yes.
Okay.
I would agree. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I feel like that's totally it.
Before we move on to talking about the musicians itself, I feel like it's a good time for us to take a quick little break and chat about some of the things that we have going on both at Disney Cicerone and Walrus Carp. Kirk, what do you got going on over there?
Well, I finally did it, kids. I've been thinking about a Mr. Toad design shirt for forever, so now I have officially created one. Although, I gotta admit, I think I'm going to remove the distressing on it. I don't know if I fully like it like that, now that I look at it as mock-ups. But it says Semper Absurda, so always absurd, and it's got little Toad and a little car. And it's kind of reliving that shield that we had at Magic Kingdom. So you can get yours $26 free shipping over at walruscarp.com.
Yeah, I love that it looks like the little heraldry shield that was outside of the attraction.
Yeah, that's what I was going for.
Yeah.
With some old English writing and try to mirror it a little bit and keep some nice colors. I popped it a little bit, made it a little bit brighter. But yeah, now when I look at I think I had to remove the distressing. I don't like it as much. So I think I'm going to update it and then fix it. But yeah.
I mean, I think that's a really good insight though into the design process. Is like I've done that too as a designer, where you will make something and you come back to it later and you're like, oh yeah, no, that has to go. That has to change. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just, I don't recognize that stuff necessarily until you start going through the process of it, Like where this one, it blends a little bit more because the background color is kind of like that. So it works a little better.
Yeah.
But on like the dark gray, it's too off-putting. It's too confusing.
It's distracting from the design.
Yes, exactly. I should have made the caravans less distracting. So, but I'll fix that before anybody can buy it. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's awesome. I'm so glad you made a shirt for this series. That's so fun.
Heck yeah.
That's awesome.
If you want one, I know a guy.
So you can get those at walruscarp.com, yeah?
Yep.
All right. So for me, I have a new book that's coming out relatively soon. I haven't gotten to work on it very much because we've just been busy with St. Patrick's Day because my husband plays Irish music, but digging back into that this week. But I wanted to kind of just talk about a little bit of my process for my last book that I published, which is Who the Mirror Reflects. And this book is a fiction story that's set in Walt Disney World that stars 2 cast members, and it features the Walt Disney World Railroad and the Liberty Bell steamboat. So if you're going to miss the rivers of America, if you're really sad about what's happening with losing the Liberty Bell, this might be a good read for you to give a little nostalgia and remember it in its good old years. But I wanted to mention that this book that is a fiction story, and at the exact same year that I wrote this book last year, I wrote another book at the same time that is a nonfiction that's all about hope. And it's really interesting how, because I wrote, depending on what I felt like in the day, sometimes I'd work on the fiction and sometimes I'd work on a nonfiction, how these books actually kind of like speak to each other in a way. They have their own kind of arcs to them, and they're definitely not the same book. And they have different stories, but because I was, as an author, writing them at the same time, they do have kind of a language that they speak between them, and they are kind of intertwined in that way. So if you want to read Who the Mirror Reflects, this one is available on Amazon.com or Audible if you prefer me to read it to you. But I just thought that was a little bit of an insight into it that most people would not get as to the process of how I write. And sometimes I just write whatever I feel like writing in a day, and that's what we do. So
I love that.
yeah. All right, we ready to move on to the musicians themselves?
Musicians,
Okay.
music time.
Yeah. And again, I had my husband help me, who is has a PhD in musicology and a master's in ethnomusicology, and I was like, help me, because some of this is a little bit strange. So I do want to start out just kind of talking about Gypsy music, Romani music in general, as is represented in film and television, often perpetuates kind of like a very exotic stereotype of these people and depicts all Roma, gypsies, and travelers as belonging to a single homogenous group of romantic outsiders or uncivilized others, which is just kind of not great. That's really simplifying their culture and their people, and it's not accurate. And unfortunately, we're talking about 1971 here. There's a little bit of that going on here as well. We're kind of like looking at them as a great big happy group of people that are just dancing and creating this music. And, okay. There's a lot going on, though, for them in the background about what's going on in their lives. So they're often misguidedly draw on Balkan or Eastern European musical influences, as we hear them in lots of places, to represent all these different groups, regardless of their nationality. So they just kind of like mash them all together and just kind of say, this is like gypsy music, quote unquote. The songs from actual Romani people are influenced by sounds and stories around them. So sometimes the rhythm or whatnot you hear is from like the wheels turning as they're traveling, or the steps they're taking, or like a lot of the things of them moving from place to place, will influence the stories and songs and rhythms and whatnot that you hear in their music. Um, the Some iconic cultural art forms, music and dance, such as flamenco, were created by the Roma people in response to their oppression. So some of this music, if you think of it being kind of like wild and free and then dancing around and whatnot, that actually kind of comes more from a response to them being so heavily oppressed, that this was kind of their outlet, their creative outlet for the oppression that they were experiencing, for the persecution. This is the way that they kind of like were able to be free and creative and express themselves. And Elliot actually pointed out that this is similar in the Irish traveler community, which is another kind of nomadic people, that they have the same kind of thing. And so Elliot and I listened to this. Okay, so Kirk, why don't you go ahead and take us through this scene before we chat more about it?
Okay, so this is going to happen really quick, but you can hear in the background, it sounds like tambourines and bells. There's laughing, and then you could see everybody having some merriment. There is movement, and there is music to this this soundtrack, and I'll let you go through the music, Miss Kate.
In the music here, this was so hard to hear. Like, Elliot and I listened to this on several different recordings of it at multiple times, and we're still like, this is almost impossible to hear. But what we did hear is, he said that a lot of the Romani people, their music had a huge impact on Liszt and Brahms, and the way that they thought about composition. And so the music we hear here, I was like, it almost sounds classical. And he's like, well, yeah, because, they pulled some things from this for that. And so he said the music you hear in the scene is reminiscent of Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsody No. 2 in C sharp minor for solo piano that Liszt wrote in 1847. So kudos to Elliot for that. He said it's not exact, but it's very similar to that. And that's likely because Liszt was inspired by Romani culture in Hungary. But I also want to say why this specific scene is in this ride, I think also has to do with music because English folk music had a huge revival in America and a lot of places in Western culture in the 60s and 70s. You think of as hippie culture came around, right? Um, so it would likely influence Rolly Crump in that way for his love of the culture, probably based on the music first and then a lot of the other cultural things as well. So I think that's why this scene is in the ride is largely because of that revival of music in the 1960s. And then it brought about all this exploration of Gypsy culture, of Romani culture because of the hippie movement, I think. So those are just my thoughts about the music in general. We'll get into the instruments as we get to individual people, but that's just kind of an overview of the music we're hearing in this scene. So, Kirk, do you want to talk about some of the characters, maybe?
Yeah, why don't we talk about the most obvious one and then go through the rest?
Okay.
So on the left-hand side, there is a character that looks nearly identical to Stromboli from the animated film Pinocchio. So I have a picture of Stromboli up. What is unique is that they literally, but apart from his like tights or pants color, very, very similar coloration even of him. He's got the green vest. He's got the red, like, I forget what you call that. It's like, I'm going to say a scarf, but it's not really a scarf around, like his waist. The shoes are similar. Yeah, like it's kind of like a cummerbund, but it's like tied and it's more just fabric.
Sash?
So I'm sure right. Let's go with sash.
Sash, yeah.
One glaring difference, though, between Stromboli and the Romani musician is that his ears are pierced. And I thought that was kind of interesting that out of all the things, that was the only thing that I noticed different. So then I immediately had to go, okay, well, what else were they building during this time period? And like what murals would be out and around? So I went to Pinocchio's village house and it's weird. For Pinocchio, he does have his ears pierced in Pinocchio Village House, but the coloration is completely different. So if you look, he's got that gold earring on both sides, just like he does in Mr. Toad's, but yet in the animated film, there is no earring.
Oh, that is interesting. I didn't notice
I don't
the
know
earring.
why. They looked so similar, and I was like, oh, let's check their clothes. Let's check their outfits. Let's look at their accessories, and that's what I noticed.
But now you know what I'm looking at is Stromboli's like caravan cart.
Oh, yeah. There's so much in there to
There's
unpack.
so much in there, but you can't go totally into that today.
I like how did you notice the hidden Mickey lock, which is totally the same as Pirates? It's great.
No.
Oh, yeah.
I'm
On the
looking close at
cage
it.
that he puts Pinocchio in on the left-hand side.
Oh my gosh, that's interesting. I never noticed that before.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's
yeah.
like that in the ride at Disneyland. I'm going to have to look at that next
Oh,
time.
that's a great call. I don't know if it is. I mean, I would imagine to keep it similar. And they already had, Pirates was already made. They would have already had these locks. Like, I can't imagine it being. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. That's a great question, though.
Interesting. I do have something about Stromboli as well. I have pretty much the same picture that you had, Kirk, about Stromboli, because I made that same connection. I was like instantly. And it's so funny because we have like Mad Madam Mim, and now we have Stromboli, and but this person who animated this is actually Bill Titla, who we've already talked about in the series. So I'm not going to go deep into it because we talked about him when we talked Night on Bald Mountain and the Heck place over in Disneyland's version with Chernabog and his face Chernabog, who also Bill Titla animated him. So this is the animator of Stromboli, and you can see him actually drawing it here. So this is Bill Titla animating that character, and I just wanted to point that out. In the scene, there's also a girl dancing with a tambourine. There is a little boy who's hanging out on the roof and dancing. Some of them have like simple animation where their like feet will go up and down.
Or their arms.
There's a woman hanging out of a window with a concertina, and also the guy who looks like Stromboli also has a concertina. So I talked with Elliot a little bit about concertinas in general. So concertinas are small and portable, which is why they would use them a lot in this typical kind of music. It's ideal for people who are nomadic. I mean, you think of it like you have limited room in that caravan, so you're not going to have a giant instrument, right? They also held their tuning, which was really important because if you're going in multiple, if you're something's getting jostled a lot or moved around a lot, you don't want to have to retune your instrument all the time. It's also, he pointed out, this is why pirates also play concertinas, because they're small and portable and they held their tuning. So you're seeing, pirates in Disney movies playing concertinas, same kind of concept. He said this is a pneumatic fixed reed instrument. The double reeds are made out of metal and designed like an oboe or bassoon. They're usually hexagonal or octagonal, and there's two common kinds of concertinas which make different sounds. The concertina is kind of like, it's like a squeeze box, right? So it's got like usually you hold on to two different sides, one in each hand, and you like pull it or push it in to make sound, right? Well, the most common one, which is what we're looking at here, is the Anglo concertina, which is bisonoric. Bisonoric, which means it makes two different sounds. So the push and the draw make two different sounds, depending on if you pull it out or push it in. And it usually has about 20 or 30 buttons to change the pitch. And those are how you make the notes, right? But the other one is called an English concertina, which is a little bit less common, and it's unisonoric, which means the push and draw have the same note. And these have 48, 56, or even 64 buttons. So lots and lots of buttons, usually a little bit more ornate, which is what you can see here. So if I had to guess, I'd say the ones that we see in Mr. Toad is probably an Anglo concertina, which is bisonoric. Of course, theirs is a little bit like more rounded than, hexagonal or anything on the ends, but I think it's just more of a stylistic choice that they made, because usually concertinas they have sides to them. They're not just round on the edges. So I don't know why they decided to make them that way, but probably just to simplify the scene is my guess. But so that's a little bit about concertinas. So you can see what they're playing there. Other things we see in this scene is there is a guy that has a large instrument, which is actually, I don't know how much this actually would have been played by the Romani people, because it's a huge instrument. Where are they putting that thing? It's like half the size of this caravan. Like legit, like this instrument is huge. It's probably a bass or double bass. And there's a guy playing it that I wanted to look into the way this character looks, because to me, he instantly reminded me of another character because he has this like red and white polka dot scarf on and earrings. And I was like, it looks like my favorite character from my favorite movie. It looks like Robin Hood when he's getting all dolled up to like tell a fortune of Prince John, right?
I love that you made that analogy. I missed that one. That's great.
Yeah, isn't it funny how so many of these characters remind us of other Disney characters?
Yeah.
So it's interesting because this was in production at the time that this ride was being created. So the production for Robin Hood began in 1968, and the movie was released in 1973. So this movie wasn't released yet, but was in production. So it's not uncommon to think that they went and saw some storyboards or some concept art of this character and then decided, yeah, like, let's draw those, Romani, those gypsy influences from this movie and throw it in here, because why not? Like, why do more research when it's already sitting around the studio? So even though I know Imagineering worked from a separate place from the studio, but I think that there was crossover. So I did look up, though, because Elliot pointed out, he's like, well, why is it polka dots? Why is it polka dots in this scene? And why is it polka dots in, Robin Hood? And it's because polka dots actually originated with the Romani people. And
No way.
yeah,
Minnie Mouse can thank the Romanis.
exactly. What it was polka dot dress costumes came from India 1,000 years ago, where they sewed these small round mirrors that are called lunaires. Or small moon is what it represents. It represents moons, so small circles that represents moons onto their dresses to ward off the evil eye. So having all these reflective mirrors all over your dress would reflect off the bad spirits, essentially. So lunaires later became polka dots, and that's why we have polka dots on our clothes today, is because of the Romani people.
That's why Minnie wears them. She wants to get all that bad, cursed,
bad juju away.
Yep, get it away.
So anyway, just a little side note about that. But I did also find these really cute pictures of Robin Hood doing meet and greets in the parks back in the 1970s. And I just wanted to show them real quick because they're really fun.
That is fun.
It's
I
got
love
this,
that. I wish he
there's
was around as a character again. He'd be great.
and they have Prince John as well in the parks. And so I just thought it would be fun to show that. But
Those are great.
yeah, there's
Oh, what crazy meet and greets.
other things we see in the scene. There's a guy with maracas, which was typically used in Latin and Caribbean music and not in Romani at all. And so I think that was just something they threw in because it looked like fun. I did not see any cultural connections with the Romani people at all. So that's not accurate to these people. And then there's a couple people with tambourines as well. I didn't do any research about tambourines in particular. I don't know if you did, Kirk.
Hey, tambourine man, play a song for me in the jingle jangle morning. Sorry.
There's Kirk's research about tambourines.
That's all I got.
Anyway, let's move on to the other side. There's another concertina player, and shout out to Jason. Thank you for getting these ones. This is from when this particular prop was on sale for auction, most likely. And so this is what the prop looks like outside of the ride. So there's yet another concertina player. This guy has a slightly different look. He's got a little striped shirt and a little vest and a scarf on, a red scarf, and then a yellow sash. Lots of bright colors in here.
It's a heck of a getup, dude.
He's happy concertina player.
That's peacocking back in the 1800s.
And then you can see, this picture was so interesting because it actually looks like it has a picture of Mr. Toad in a circle up at the top, which was so weird that almost looks angry or something. And then there's like a cow or a bull back there as well. But I don't know what that's about. I don't know if you saw that, Kirk.
I didn't. That's so interesting.
Yeah. And I didn't recognize it in the scene itself. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that. But then next to them, we have a man that's playing an instrument that looks like a fiddle. He's holding it. And there's another one, if you look on the back left, I'll just talk about them at the same time. There's another similar one. And I thought it was a fiddle or a violin, and Elliot's like, no, that's not it, because it's a 3-stringed instrument. He said it's a 3-stringed bowed chordophone instrument, but we couldn't really figure out what kind because we haven't seen anything that looks like this. It has 3 strings and it has one single tuning peg that's stuck in the top of the neck of this. And that's just kind of strange. So we looked up there's like one called a rebec, which is a bowed string instrument of the medieval and early Renaissance periods that was characterized, but it had like a pear-shaped body. But it had 3 strings, so maybe there's that. It had like a nasal sound to it. But all we know is it's not a traditional fiddle or violin. We could not figure out what kind of instrument this is. I think it's supposed to be a fiddle, but it only has like a couple strings.
Yeah, not accurate.
This actually looks like it might have 4 strings. It's hard to tell, but it doesn't look, I don't know. It's not like your typical fiddle. There's no F holes either on the sides for it. So it's very strange. And then the guy right above him is playing something that you would think maybe is like a guitar or something, or I thought maybe like a lute, but it's actually a balalaika. A balalaika is a Russian stringed instrument that has a characteristic triangular wooden hollow body, a fretted neck, and 3 strings. This is usually used for Russian folk music and dancing. And while some Romani musicians may play the balalaika, it's not usually a core instrument of like what they actually typically would play. So maybe somebody picked it up from somewhere, but it's not something that they usually have in their musical repertoire. Usually they use like a violin or a fiddle, a guitar or accordion or concertina. Like those are typically the instruments you hear in Romani music. So it's a balalaika, but it probably shouldn't be there. And but it is anyway. So there's also another dude with a tambourine who definitely has some. It's interesting in this one because you can see where he's being held up on a pole and where his animation is being done, which I think is really fun.
Oh yeah. On the bottom, the actuator.
Mm-hmm. You can really see that very clearly in this one, and then you can see that guy with another fiddle or whatever stringed instrument behind him, and then like a horse behind them who looks like he's having a good day. And then the last thing we see is this. This is actually a caravan that's on the door that splits in half, and there's like a person that's saying basically like stop. They're like, you're running right into the middle of my caravan, my home, my
my
home.
house.
And that's pretty much the end of that scene. So that's all we got there.
Just like that person in the caravan. Kate, stop the episode.
We have to stop there because that is the whole show, which is this one scene. But there's so many details in this scene and a lot of history to go over. So I'm glad that we got to dig in deep into all of that and really understand what is happening in the scene, why Rolly Crump put in the scene to begin with. What is it representing? And it's so unique to this attraction. It's not in the other version of Toad at all. And we don't ever see it. So I feel like this was very much like a piece of Rolly Crump because he loved these, the Gypsy camp, the Romani culture. He loved this stuff so much that we actually really see a good piece of him in this piece of the attraction.
It's a little minor museum of the weird.
It is. And now it's gone, which is also very sad. I think that pretty much wraps up this episode. Next time we'll head into the one-way street and then into Town Square, which has its own mess of stuff to go over. And that's going to be a really fun adventure to dig through all of that. Kirk, do you have any final thoughts here as we wrap up?
When a Russian girl really fancies a stringed instrument, we call that a balalaika.
A balalaika. Yeah. Oh, and I had my fortune told today, so I'm feeling pretty good.
Dude, watch out for that 5 of spades, girl. You got to get after it.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for this episode of Distory. We hope you had a good time going into this Romani camp with us and exploring all the little cultural details of this. And we'll see you next time for another episode of Distory.